Welcome back to The Uncomfortable Truth. My guest today is my buddy, Randy Gage. Randy Gage and I know each other for quite some time. We're in the National Speakers Association together and so forth. We share some things. We both come from poor backgrounds, for example. And it struck me the other day, Randy, the one thing I can say, but my son and daughter can never say is, this ain't my daddy's money, right? So no matter how well they do, some of it's going to be daddy's money. But Randy and I really agree on prosperity and not being ashamed of it and so forth. So let me get this exactly right. His new book is Wealth Without Apology. He's had numerous New York Times bestsellers. And he's talking here about what kind of roadblocks, what kind of mental roadblocks, not just external ones, prevent us from enjoying prosperity when we are able to create it. Randy has said, look, the way to cure poverty is not by creating more of it. And what I add to this discussion is you have no right to consume wealth and happiness without creating wealth and happiness. So, Randy, why don't we start with as I mentioned, you come from a certain kind of beginning. You've mentioned frequently you've been shot, you've been in jail. Tell us about that, how that colored your life.
Yeah, this book is kind of the culmination of that journey, being in jail for armed robbery at 15 years old, going on to produce more than $23 billion worth of revenue for myself, my clients, and my proteges. And everything along the way, the 16 books and the Speaker Hall of Fame and building speaking in 50 some different countries. Just that journey of what I learned, like what are the lessons people can apply so that they don't feel guilty about money, success, even health. You know yourself, right? There are people who will guilt you just because you're healthy. There are people who will guilt you because you're happy. And we got to show people that no, let's change the conversation on this.
So tell me about some of the internal blocks. I write a lot about self-esteem and about not trusting your own judgment and so forth. So tell me about some of the internal blocks you see that hold people back.
It's the worthiness issues. And I might like do a chapter in a book and I'm talking about worthiness issues. You might do a chapter in a book and say, why, when you're consulting with a client, would you ask for such a small fee? And we're both talking about exactly the same dynamic, which is identity. I think for most people, it goes back to self identity. How do you see the value that you provide the world?
So people ask me all the time, having responded with something like that, what can I best do to build my self-esteem? Because what I found is that ego is an external manifestation. And your ego can be fragile. It can be smashed. A bully comes along, or someone comes along and says, hey, you're wrong about that. You've always been wrong about that. But self-esteem is internal, and it often suffers just because of neglect, a lack of attention. How do you tell people to build that sense of self-worth?
I'm a routine guy, and one of my mainstays and a routine for me for 40 years is self-development time every morning. Reading a book, listening to a podcast, something working on me. And a lot of that helps my self-esteem, I find. If you get on social media today, there's so many people who want to tear us down. There's so many negative and dysfunctional, toxic mind viruses floating around. And you've got to limit yourself to your exposure to those, including the people who are delivering them. So that's part of it. I'm very maniacal, obsessed about who I allow to speak into my life. And even I take on Sunday. I have a good buddy, many years. He asked me to be best man in his wedding, but he's a social media guy. He's on every day on X every day. And, so he sends me out three clips. Hey, look at this stupid idiot doing this. And he's a MAGA guy. So he's talking about the liberals, but I have liberal friends who do the same thing with the MAGA people. They do nut picking, right? You pick the craziest, outlandish thing from the other side, and then you get outraged about it. And I sent him a message. I'm like, I just came back from a walk around the marina, It's a beautiful day. I actually looked up the weather in his town before I responded. I said, I just checked the weather. It's a gorgeous day over there. What did you really wake up this morning and say, I need to find three things that I can be outraged about? Where you live, it's a beautiful, you got a beautiful family. Why don't you go out in the real world, right? We need people in our lives who will do for him what I was doing for him, will do that for us. People who will not pull the negative trigger, people who will celebrate the good things we can do and help us become the highest possible version of ourselves.
So a lot of this is personal accountability. I always found that when I was in school, I read every word on every page in every book because I thought that's why I was there. I didn't try to steal a test. I didn't try to copy off someone else. I felt that's what it was all about. And along the road here, I've written a lot of books. I've read a lot of books, but one of my very favorites is Ayn Rand and well, she wrote Fountainhead, but Atlas Shrugged. Objectivism. People should be allowed to achieve and do their own thing and not taken down to a common denominator. And a lot of the professional associations that you and I are, let's say, familiar with, aren't happy until every member is as successful as their least successful member. So, are you an Ayn Randian? I guess I'm asking you, and what do you think about this tendency to lower the bar?
So I gave up trying to have the biggest library in the world a few condos ago. I'd sent 55 boxes of books to the library, and I've done twice since then. I have sold my place, including the furniture, and said, hey, add this much and just bring your toothbrush because I go and I start fresh. But the one thing, there's about 80 books that I never give up. I have a first edition Atlas Shrugged on my bookcase. That is one of my most treasured possessions for just that reason you talk about. It's, it really is, there is this socialistic mystique, myth, I don't know, misconception, whatever we want to call it, like with those associations you're talking about. Well, yeah, we need to slow everybody down so that the last guy in the line can keep up. Whereas we should be saying, hey, we're going to keep the train moving, and that last guy in line, he's going to be a little breathless. We're not going to leave him at the station. We'll give him the chance to get on the train, but he's going to have to work to do it. He's going to have to be a little breathless and jump on the train because we're not going to stop the train for everybody to do that for this person.
So the magic bullet today, to avoid all that, to avoid trying to accommodate really fast learners and all stars, is tax the rich, soak the rich, millionaires tax, billionaires tax, and so forth. And recently, they passed this in Massachusetts, and the estimate is they've lost, I think it's 4.7 billion in taxable assets, 75% of which was for people who would have qualified for this added assessment. Uh, so where do you think? Well, I believe that this is a magic bullet. Let's tax the rich, we'll all be happy. Uh, what do you think about that? It comes out in various forms, Occupy Wall Street and so forth. What do you think about this?
Huge movement of that in California. As you know, another state, they're going to lose not billions, they're going to lose trillions over a few years of taxable revenue because they have driven away all the Silicon Valley, the dot-com billionaires. They're coming here to Florida or to Texas, where there is no state tax. I made a mistake once. I had an apartment in San Diego and there was a traveling softball team, and they said, we want you to do some tournaments with us, but you got to have a driver's license for California. I'm like, okay, I'll go. So I switched my driver's license. A couple of months later, I get this bill from the state of California. It says, oh, we looked at your federal income tax, and because we didn't see any California tax, and they wanted to charge me it was like $300,000 in state taxes because of the And I'm like, no, no, no. I am a resident of Florida. I keep an apartment here, right? But it's literally, you'd have to be insane to live in California or some of these places now. And here's the funny story with the book. That was never the book I set out to write. That was not the title. That was not the theme. It was just going to be an overall book on how you manifest a prosperous life. And I skew a little more to entrepreneurs because I believe entrepreneurs have an easier time creating wealth and prosperity than employees do as a rule, but it's not, doesn't mean an employee can't be prosperous. I just think it's easier as an entrepreneur. But as I'm writing the book, chapter after chapter, and I'm looking at the guilt aspect of how people, how we're taught, how we're treated when we want to become healthy, happy, wealthy, and then the rackets that society runs on us. And all of a sudden, the book title wrote itself. Like, no, you know what? This book, you remember, because I think when I sent you Alan was one of my first galley proofreaders. And I think the first edition I sent you had a different title. And then it came to be this title, Wealth Without Apology, because I think that's the dynamic people aren't looking at is how pervasive and insidious the programming is against wealthy people, and this whole nonsense about tax the billionaires. I mean, I go to one of my softball games, and there's a guy with a T-shirt that says billionaires shouldn't exist. I'm like, so what happens if I become a billionaire? They should kill me then, or they're going to take all my money? And, what's the exact plan? It's just a crazy philosophy.
So let's see what the guardrails are here. So, for example, if we look at Bezos, or we look at Elon Musk, who are billionaires, right? And others like them, uh, are you still seeing there simply a drive to excel, or are you also seeing more of an egotistical need to be the best and the best known, and to have, in Bezos's case, arm candy and so forth?
I think there's definitely that element to it. I have this entrepreneur accelerator program with three different levels, and the top levels vary 10 grand a month. So they're serious people. And some of those people at that's their issue. They fell down that rabbit hole and they're recognizing there's always somebody with a bigger yacht and there's always somebody higher on the Forbes list, or great, they're doing 50 million a year, but their spouse doesn't want to talk to them, or they got 17 dry cleaners or 82 delis or this, but their kids couldn't pick them out of a police lineup. And they've realized, wow, wait, there's got to be more of this. So I think a case like Elon, I'm not a psychologist. I don't play one on TV. I do think he's a malignant narcissist by all the public evidence of that. And I think you combine a malignant narcissist with social media, and that's what you end up with. This vapid, superficial competition for it's just virtue signaling, status signaling. Um, I just every day I'm like, there, but by the grace of God, go me, because I was heading down that path, right? I had 250 watches and all the exotic cars lined up down below in the garage, and I just got to a point where I said, I think I don't own all this stuff. I think it owns me, and I sold everything. That was one of the cases where I literally sold my condo to a sheik from Dubai. And he was the one that bought all the furniture and everything. I said, just bring your toothbrush. And I went on a sabbatical for 2 years. I just traveled the world, worked on me, did self-development every day, shut down my blog, my podcast, my social media, everything. And that was one of the most wonderful things for me. And I really got a much more broader, deeper understanding of prosperity, which led me to the four quadrants, is how I quantify it in the new book.
Some years ago, my wife was volunteering to raise money, and she was stationed on a tee at a golf tournament. Um, and my wife has raised millions without ever asking for a dime. I want to write that book, and she won't let me. But guy comes over to her, big spender, heavy hitter, and he starts putting moves on her. And somebody says to him, "She drives that Bentley over there." And he says, "Honey, I've got a boat." And Maria says to him, "Believe me, it's not big enough." And that led me to TIAABB. There is always a bigger boat. And you can, if you get into that rat race, I don't care how much money you have, you're never going to win. I remind you of the Sultan of, where is it? Oh, I want to, not Putin. Anyway, Brunei, the Sultan of Brunei. He and one of the Microsoft people, I think, or one of the Apple people, they would add like 6 feet to their boat every other year to try to outdo the other one.
Yeah.
You should have other things to do with your time, I think.
Yeah, and it just and it when you're there and you're finally the guy with the biggest yacht, there is 10 guys doing exactly that, ordering the next one. How do I extend this one to make sure? It's like when I told my friend who wakes up and he's looking to be outraged on X. It's
Yeah.
like, is that really how you want to spend your day?
You go to St. Bart's, and the inner harbor is filled with these big yachts. You can just walk across them. And the bigger ones, which don't fit, are out like on the horizon. And I'm wondering, well, you spent all that money on that big yacht, but you can't even have people see it because you can't fit it in here, right? Seems self-defeating. So let me test the guardrails again. My feeling is that if you build something yourself, as you and I have done, but Fred Smith has done at Federal Express, or Steve Jobs did at Apple, and so forth, then all the money you make is your money. I mean, that's your talent. But does it make sense for these public companies to hire a CEO and pay, let's say, $160 million to run the company when probably they can get somebody for 50 million to run it perfectly well? Is that an excess, or what do you think about that?
Um, my take on this would be if I've got a company, if I'm a shareholder in a company, I want the best damn CEO money can buy. And I go that way, even like I was president of my church board, the board of directors for a couple of years, and we were hiring a new minister. And I had the whole board saying, our budget and this, and he wants this much money. And I'm like, when I go to church, I want to be at the church. I don't care if the minister is driving a Lambo or a Bentley or a Ferrari. I would much rather go to that church than the church where the minister is driving a broken down Chevy that has rusted out floor. Because I want my spiritual leader to be prosperous, right? So I believe even for charities, I want them to compete with the private sector. I want them so I want a CEO who's now you say, I don't know, like Elon, if you look at the deal he has, he's going to do the IPO for SpaceX. He's going to roll everything into that. I did a blog maybe a couple months ago on 17 predictions that I think are going to happen. And one of them I put is that I believe the SpaceX IPO will be the biggest bust in IPO history because the underlying financials are not there. He's brilliant at creating this cult of personality. People price the stock based on that cult. But at some point, you got to deliver the cars, you got to meet the deadlines, you got to produce the results. And he is one of the most brilliant visionary geniuses on earth. I have no problem giving credit for that. But like if you look at his stock package that he's got now for that company, I think it's crazy, but I want the shareholders to decide that. If the shareholders vote him that and they say, we want him or her to get this amount, then I have no problem with it whatsoever.
Now, see, I think sometimes that organizations judge the quality of the candidate on the kind of money that's demanded. And I sort of ceased to see a big difference between 160 million and say 75 million running a public company. I mean, there are a lot of good people around. But before I go on, I need to digress here. I just heard you say church, I think 13 times in the space of 6 minutes. Um, I haven't heard that from you in the 15 years I've known you. So that's interesting. Are you local? Are you currently active in a church?
I was a lay minister at the Unity on the Bay Church for 20 years, you should know.
I should know that. I take it that might not be yesterday, though.
Yeah, I haven't been doing that for probably 5 or 6 years. Minister changed, church moved, different things happened. I went on my sabbatical. I like to call myself a fundamentalist agnostic now, meaning, I don't, you can't find empirical evidence that there is a God,
Or
and
that
you
there isn't.
can't find empirical evidence that there isn't a God. So I'm not one of these people so arrogant to say, I know the truth. My truth is the real truth. And only if you follow my truth are you going to get the free trip to paradise at the end of the game.
I find that agnostic is like atheist light in today's terminology, but we can go into that another time. So listen, um, why are sports figures and entertainment figures exempt from this, the people who really despise those who are very successful? In other words, a second string ball player is making 30 mil a year, and these just keep going up, up, and up. The Dodgers are the wealthiest team probably in the history of humanity. Of course, they win World Series. Uh, but why do people sort of make them exempt? Like the executives from Wall Street, you can try to kill on the street, like Luigi did. Um, but
Right.
but the athletes and the entertainers, well, they're okay. Why is that distinction made, do you think?
I think it's made a lot less than you may know today. Because I know you're not a big you're not a big diet of social media. If you were, you'd see there's nobody above reproach anymore, whether it's Shohei Ohtani, the LeBron James, whoever, for every person who idolizes and worships them and kid who adores them, there are the haters, and it's less than the CEOs because there's just more mind viruses about that. The evil, greedy, mean entrepreneurs, business people. If we look at, like, in the book, I use examples of movies like Jaws and Titanic and Alien and Avatar, and who's the villain in all those movies? It's always the evil, greedy corporation run by the evil, greedy
Right,
business people.
or the evil politician who wants to overlook it, like in Jaws, it was the mayor who did.
Well, they get paid by those evil, greedy,
Right.
like the Jaws. That's the mayor who says, we're not going to close the beach. Don't tell anyone about this, because all the business people are saying, hey, you're going to kill the tourism. People are not going to come and spend money in our stores and our hotels if you let them know that there's this 800-pound, 8,000-pound shark eating everybody.
Yeah, you're gonna need a bigger boat. Yeah. One of the
Yeah.
great lines from any. That line was improv. It wasn't written.
Was it?
Yeah, and he said it.
What's his name? Ray Schneider? Roy Schneider?
Yeah, Roy Schneider, and the director said, "Keep rolling." Yeah.
I can believe it, because that is, first of all, he was really good as
Yeah.
an actor. He's
Oh yeah.
just a brilliant guy. And yeah, that was golden,
Yeah.
golden.
It's just a perfect touch. Now you talk in the book about victimhood, and victimhood has to be replaced. You said. Um, Is victimhood something that results from people feeling early oppressions when they were a child and so forth? Or is it a defense mechanism saying it's not that I am not good, it's that other people are oppressing me?
Yes.
All of the above.
Yeah, I think so, because there's so many flavors of victimhood today. The, the dynamic that nobody looks at is the psychological payoff that people get from being a victim. And for anyone watching or listening, I'm allowed to say that because I was a professional victim for 30 years. Right? And I had no idea at the time, but that's who I was at that time. If you had dinner with me and say, hey, what's going Oh, you can't believe my chief boss did this. And then, the SOBs at the electric company, they cut off my power and my boss is a jerk and the economy is this. And
Was that a
I
learned
just
behavior?
say again.
Was that a learned behavior or was that a natural sort of evolution with you?
In my case, I think it was learned because I come from a whole family that was probably that mindset for many generations.
Mhm.
And so you want to really get into the my family, we put the fun back in dysfunctional, that's our theme song. Uh, in my family, nobody said, I love you. Nobody hugged you. When I saw my grandfather, he would shake my hand, say, how are you doing, Randy? He didn't leave his bedroom without a tie on. His kids never saw him without a tie. Okay, he's old Germanic, laced up. That's where I'm coming from, right? So I didn't know how. And plus, I'm on the spectrum, so that didn't make it any easier. I had social anxiety because of that. Didn't make it any easier. But so I'm just I was approaching everything in a fearful way, and I couldn't accept love because I didn't love myself. I
Mhm.
hated myself.
Mhm.
So I put up this wall around me. So in place of love, I sought sympathy. I sought attention. I saw, like, as a teenager, I sought drugs and alcohol to escape. When I got off the drugs and alcohol, I sought that sympathy I kept manifesting business failures and health challenges and everything. So people could say, oh, poor Randy, you're such a victim. And it took me a few years of therapy to recognize, wow, I was just trying to get this sympathy because I desperately wanted love and I didn't know how to accept it or express it or ask for it.
Or maybe find it even.
Right.
You talk about the real rules of the money game. I think that's a phrase you use.
Yeah.
What do you mean by the real rules of the money game?
You got to realize there is a game. They own it. There's people who created it, a modern day matrix, financial institutions, financial planners, credit card companies, marketers, banks, all of those things. And they say, hey, Alan, you're such a good guy. Your balance this month is $2,400, but all you need to send us is $42 minimum because we're nice guys. You're nice guys. Just send us that. You don't see the part at the bottom that says, oh, and if you do this, it will take you 42 years
Yeah.
to pay off this credit card.
And cost you $500,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Same with your mortgage, right? You say, well, I bought a $200,000 house. No, you probably bought a $700,000 house if you do a traditional mortgage and you don't know the rules of the game. So, in that chapter of the book, I'm trying to show people, hey, there are rules. They may not be written down or visible or well known, but they're there. And you better learn what those rules are so you can beat them at their own game.
So in my community, and I've evolved to focus on lifestyle, not just how do you consult well and sell services. In my community, there are a lot of good people who globally have a similar kind of issue, and that is um, how do they improve uh, and get out of the rut they've been in by doing things conventionally, and it's okay, they can feed the family, but it doesn't afford them the ability to be philanthropic or to make large impulse purchases or things like this. Are there three or four things that you've experienced or you've recommended that help you break out of that?
Well, one of the key words you said there was something to the effect of doing it the conventional way. And the answer is don't do it the conventional way. Like consulting. I don't do consulting the conventional way. You don't do consulting the conventional way. That's why we make millions of dollars as consultants. I don't do proposals, for instance. So they want to talk to me about consulting. I say, great, book an hour with Sam or book 2 hours with Sam, and they pay for it. So now I've already trained them. Oh, you want advice from Randy? That costs money. I had a lady tell me, well, she's on the phone asking. I say, yeah, book a time with Sam and he'll. And she said, haven't you ever heard of free consultation? I said, lady, what do you think we're doing right now? Now, if you want to do more, you got to pay for it. She ended up being a corporate consulting client with a very big contract. But I trained her from the start, right? Then I set up, it's either in-person meeting or a Zoom, and I hear what their problems are, the issues they need to solve. And I'm only going to places where I know I can help them solve their problem. Otherwise, I wouldn't waste my time or their time, right? So I know going in, I can help them do what they want to do. So then I will say, all right, here's how I can help you. Here's what I would do. Da, 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 da. And we're recording this. And if I've got an outline or a PowerPoint that shows the key points, we tell them we're going to send you the recording and the PowerPoint. And that's it. Randy doesn't do proposals. So, because sometimes at the end, they might say, well, okay, great, send us a proposal. No, 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 we don't have proposals. This is the proposal. This meeting right here, you know exactly what, right? That's not conventional. Conventional. So for those people who say, well, I'm doing stop doing the conventional. When everybody's zigging, you want to be zagging. You've got to own the space. You've got to me, it's all about building signal. When people say, I need more money, I need more investors, I can't. No, you don't need more money. You need stronger signal. You don't need more people. You need stronger signal. Because when your signal is strong enough, people will throw money at you. People will beg to be your customer. People will beg to be your partner. People will beg to work with you. So it's about becoming that iconic thought leader. This is the other superpower you and I both have. We're thought leaders in our space. We don't spout the conventional bullshit. You don't hear the same thing you hear from 27 other books. I don't want to throw anybody in the bus, so I'm going to be anonymous. But I just got a book from a colleague that you would know, mutual, and they're sending me their new book, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, I read the whole book because they're a friend, but I finished the book, and I'm like, I still have no idea what my friend's opinion is. Because in the whole book, he says, there's a study from McKinsey that says this, and then there's a study conducted at Harvard that says it. And it's like, I could get that in 3.5 seconds on Chat GPT. The mantra for those people, this is a long answer, but I love this question, so I'm riffing on it. But the answer for those people is nobody's going to pay you for what you know anymore because AI already knows everything you know. It knows everything everyone knows. If you want to get paid, they're going to pay you for what you think. And that means you're iconic, you're a thought leader, you've developed IP, you've created market gravity, you've built signal.
Strong brand. Hmm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I noticed too is I think it's much more, I'm curious what you think, but I think today the personal brands are so much stronger than the corporate ones.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I tell everybody who will listen that the ultimate brand is your name. And being Questgar Cosmic, Consulting is not the answer. And if your name's complicated, which some are, it could be an advantage. Or just change your name a little bit. But the brand's got to be your name. You don't want to say get me a strategist and your name's in the hat. You want to say get me Alan Weiss. That's what you need. No cost of acquisition, right?
Right.
So, and I think that part of this comes down to what I call shameless promotion. If you don't blow your own horn, there is no music. And consequently, to do the kinds of things you're recommending, don't do the tried and true. Try it differently. I tell people, don't try to solve a problem right away, reframe it. And so you're looking at it in a completely different way. You're losing talent, it's an opportunity, not a threat. They were doing yesterday's job. Now you can hire for tomorrow's job. I never looked at it that way. Okay, here's where you can send the check. So um, I think there's this need to free yourself and to produce new IP and to produce new perspectives and how you look at things. And people need the freedom to do that. I think that's intertwined with what you're talking about here. You talked about people guilting before. I think people guilt themselves.
Oh, for sure. They don't even know they're doing it. It's just programmed into their operating system. And that's what creates self-sabotage.
So how much of this do you think is about inner language? Because I've worked with some clients who start a sentence with, I'm terrified of, I'm afraid of, I don't know how, instead of saying, I can't wait to do this, and I don't know, for the last 10 or 15 years, positive psychology has been in vogue. Marty Seligman wrote Learned Optimism, and how you talk to yourself informs your behaviors. You think that one of the answers here might be to change the inner voice and to change what you're saying to yourself?
100,000 million%. I am so all in on that for 30 years, 40 years now. I've been like, okay, this makes so like when I'm working with someone and they say, I'm terrified, I'm like, whoa, 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 wait, let's stop. Let's reframe that. Let's not program that into your subconscious mind. No, but it's true. I really am terrified. No, no, no. How about if we say, in the past, I have been terrified of, or up to this point, I've had difficulty finding the right people, or up until now, I haven't been able to manifest my true soulmate, or whatever you just I believe in affirmations. I believe in vision boards. I believe in self-talk, all of that stuff. I attribute a huge, huge percentage of my success to that belief.
So I get the impression from what you've written in the book that health and wealth um, contribute to growth, and personal growth contributes to health and wealth. In other words, it's sort of an ecosystem. It's a self-reinforcing positive cycle. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think we want to build a prosperity flywheel.
Ah,
And when you're young, we spend more time, right? Okay, great. You're 20 years old, you're launching your new company, you're going to work 19 hours a day to do it for a season. Okay, great. You're at a point in your life where you could do that. You're 55 years old, you don't want to be working 19 hours a day. You want to be with your spouse, your kids, your grandkids, whatever, your health, your other stuff, right? So we should create this flywheel where, okay, how do I add value? How do I solve problems? How do I turn that into money? Then how do I put that money to work? The maybe the most important question in that entire book is the very simple one. Do you work for money or does money work for you?
hmm.
Boom, mic drop, end of discussion, whatever cliche you want to use. Because once your money works for you, now you can wake up every day wealthier than you were when you went to sleep. What does that mean? Freedom, choices, ability. Now you can do the family stuff, the relationship stuff, the health stuff, the creative stuff, the work you love to do. And you can take this money and buy back time, right? So you've seen the lady walking back and forth behind me here. That's my chef who comes in and prepares all my meals for the week and stacks them up into Rubbermaid in the refrigerator, right? I have someone who does that. I have someone who does my house. I have someone who washes my car, fills it up with gas. I don't have time for any of that. I buy back that time so I can either A, spend it on rainmaker activity, or B, spend it on the time with the people and the activities that enhance my life. I don't, for most entrepreneurs, like literally today, I was on the Ford with Ford Sakes, who, I just chatted with him about 15 minutes about maybe buying another laptop and setting up a Claude coding thing to do more AI stuff for me that I could automate as opposed to doing it myself. Because I'm always looking for how can I buy back more time?
Yeah, I find I can always make another dollar. I can't make another minute. But buying back time is it's a nice example. I've got three more questions for you, Randy. I'll let you go. You've been very kind. Uh, I've used therapy throughout my life. I three different occasions, I should say, which I found very beneficial if you find the right chemistry and so forth. Have you engaged in therapy yourself?
I swear by it. And I'm currently looking for a new therapist that I would like to just meet with once a week to check things out.
Hmm. That's that's interesting. Um, one of my experiences was I said to my therapist, he said, "Why the hell are you here?" I said, "I want to know if I'm dealing with success correctly. This is more than I ever imagined." And his response was, "I wish I had more clients like you." So, okay, second and third question. Second question is, if you had to pick two, three things, I don't care. Um, Given the fact, you know who my audience is, they're entrepreneurs internationally, from people who are making six figures and want to go to seven, people making seven want to go to eight, and so forth. Um, and people who realize, hey, where I am is fine. I don't need more money. What I need is more time, or I need more X, Y, or Z. Um, what two or three things would you like to leave them with?
Scale, delegate, scale, Dan Sullivan's book, Who, Not How, that's what inspired me to hire the current assistant that I have. I had thought after Lornette, my longtime assistant, retired, I was like, I'm never going to have another employee. I'll just do VAs and whatever. And I just realized, no, and that's when I hired him. And that's the thing I want. When I come back from a speech, I want the car filled up with gas, washed, food in the refrigerator, blah, blah, blah. Your tribe, they can't afford to clean their own house. They can't afford to wash their own clothes. They can't afford to mow their own lawn. They can't afford to do any of that stuff. And then they got to look at AI and say, what are the repetitive stuff that I'm doing that I can't afford to do? What the billing stuff, the payroll stuff, the logistics stuff, the busy work stuff. And then you got to say, who can I keep delegating this stuff to? And I keep getting more and more in my genius zone, in my rainmaker zone, because that's when it's magic. That's when we don't have jobs. That's when we really do throw those covers off the bed on Monday morning and we're eager to go and do our work because it's part of who we are. And so, like the speakers, coaches, consultants, I think most of them that I see, they haven't invested enough in themselves. Like, I remember, I'm going to date myself. If anyone who's watching has already figured this out, but I'm old, right? So I'm fax machine old. I remember creating my first magalog that I was going to produce for myself, which for anyone who doesn't know, a magalog is simply a catalog that looks like a magazine. It's got helpful articles and tips and things, and then it's got a shelf life. People keep it around. So I create a magalog for myself because I've got all these CD albums, DVD albums, and all of this stuff. I don't have the money to print it, right? Phone rings, the guy calls up and he says, "Hey, and I'm answering the phone myself in those days, right?" So he asked me, "Do you have a catalog of all like your books and audios and stuff that you could fax me?" And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got the printed thing. It is, it's not printed, but it's faxable. So I say, yeah, I can fax you. So I fax him the catalog. About 20 minutes later, a 800 and some dollar order comes back. So that's a big deal for me in those days. That's a big sale. I take that whole $800 and I print the magalog. And that magalog probably made me $1 million worth of business over the next few years. When I did my first demo video, right, I spent thousands of dollars really creating a kick-ass video, bunch of different things, good editing, good sound, good lights, whatever. I invested in that, right? I've invested in AI now, right? I just spent 50 grand creating AI agents that free me up to do stuff. And I think there's too many coaches, speakers, consultants, those kind of people that don't make those big investments. They're just doing the ham and egger thing, and that's not serving anybody.
Yeah. If you can't invest in yourself where you should get the best possible return, what are you going to invest in? You can get Randy's book and his other books wherever books are sold or they're given away on street corners, any place like that. Somebody bought 100 books for me once to qualify for something. I said, "What'd you do with that in Manhattan?" He said, "I put it on my front step at night. I took one for myself, and the next morning they're all gone." So apparently, a lot of homeless people have learned from me, I would assume. Randy, where can people go to find out more about you and to get in your consulting process there?
All right, so randygage.com, that's kind of my Starfleet command site. Blog is there, podcast is there, YouTube channel, everything spins off there. And of course, the books are on Amazon, and the new book is Wealth Without Apology.
Thank you for being here. I greatly appreciate it.
And thank you so much for bringing me in. I just am grateful for your support.